And we're back for another segment of the Heart of Rural America. I'm reporting to you live from Washington, D.C. It is day 3 here, boots on the ground as we fight for your private property rights and work to defund the Green New Deal. You've heard from Speaker of the House, John Hanson, and next up is Speaker Pro Tem Karla Lems, who is on the ticket with John Hanson to run as your next Lieutenant Governor of the state of South Dakota. Karla, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Amanda, for having me.
So Karla and I, quite literally, she's been tracking our steps. And yesterday we did 20,000 steps here in Washington, D.C. in heels, by the way. And I think that deserves a medal all on its own. But we've literally been, just burning rubber out here, going to back meetings. And I wanted to get a recap from Karla before we head to the airport to talk about those meetings, her thoughts. So I guess, Karla, tell us who we've all met with. I mean, tell the folks at home who we've met with, who we've talked to out here in DC.
We had a whole list of people, and I won't mention all of them, but for a sampling for you all, we had met with Representative Chip Roy this morning. We met with Josh Burkeen, Mary Miller, Harriet Hageman, a representative from Thomas Massey's office met with us, as well as yesterday we were able to meet with both of the senators from South Dakota, Senator John Thune and Senator Mike Rounds, and we've had some great conversations.
So it's been interesting because one of the themes that we've heard over and over again as this coalition of South Dakota legislators and landowners have gone into these offices is that they've kind of heard of us.
Yes, they have. And all of you are aware of what happened in South Dakota with the CO2 pipeline and the bill that was brought this year, HB 1052, which myself and Senator Mark Lopke were able to bring forth and got passed in South Dakota and got it signed into law. Now, we saw in some of these meetings that we were at, Amanda, that the people were like, oh, yeah, we've heard about that bill. And in fact, one of the reasons that we came out to Washington, because we kind of thought we were done with this CO2 pipeline in our state. And more than that, it was, the overall arching theme of property rights in South Dakota that were again going to be under attack because of something that was put into the reconciliation bill on the House side, which ends up being the big, beautiful bill. And in many ways, it is a beautiful bill, but there are a few things in there that were concerning to us, including the federal preemption of the right for the federal government to basically use eminent domain for some of this Green New Deal scam, including the CO2 pipelines. And so obviously we know that that got taken out on the House side, but just wanted to make sure that there was no chance that this was going to be making its way back into the Senate bill.
As an example, we were in Chip Roy's office, who's from Texas, and he knew about this bill in South Dakota. He really went swinging for us because he knew that this precedent of carbon sequestration pipelines is not just happening in South Dakota or Iowa or North Dakota. It's in Louisiana, it's in Oklahoma, it's in Texas, and he's not buying into the Green New Deal. But he's like, it's because of the fight in South Dakota that we were very well aware of this, and that he was willing to use quite a bit of political capital to make sure that that got out. And so really it's a kudos to the people at home for making this abundantly clear where
Absolutely.
we stand. And I guess, Karla, on the other side of things, that was a really good thing we heard over and over again. What was a little something else we heard?
Well, we heard about some other states too. One of our conversations, it was said that some of these states really are pushing this to be in the bill. And some of the states mentioned were Nebraska, North Dakota, and a big push from Iowa to have this in the bill. And the question was posed, are you talking about the delegation from Iowa? Or are you talking about the people of Iowa? Well, no, it's the delegation from Iowa that really wants this in the bill. And we know, Amanda, from working with a lot of legislators and citizens in the state of Iowa, that they are not in favor of this in the state of Iowa. So that tells me that there's a lot of politics that are going on behind the scenes that are pushing this forward and really wanting this, not only the preemption, but the 45Q tax credit itself.
Right. And I'm glad you brought the 45Q tax credit up. That was another message we came out here to share, that really this is funding the Green New Deal, that it is funding these boondoggles, and it's not fiscally responsible. I mean, we have trillions of dollars in national debt, and we're going to add even more to bury plant food. It's ridiculous. But what is kind of the sentiment that you're getting on that? I mean, is there any will from our Congress to do something about that tax credit?
Well, again, I think there are several in our Congress that would like to do that, but they do not have enough support. And they keep saying that the lobbyist voice is very strong out here on that issue. They feel that, there's been money invested in these things and they are entitled to your taxpayer dollars and mine. And again, until this 45Q tax credit is removed, I believe that this will still, I look at it as the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow being our property that they need to get this project done, and the pot of gold being my tax dollars and yours that are going to pay for this. And so it's really important that the people in these states speak up. I think that that is the only way forward for us to actually make a dent in this 45Q tax credit, either getting it reduced dramatically or getting it removed altogether, which is really what should happen, because you and I know that this country is facing unprecedented debt that we are not going to be able to sustain, and that my children, my grandchildren are going to be paying for many years to come. It's just not a wise use of taxpayer dollars, because the 45Q tax credit is wrapped up in a fake project. And we need to have people stand up across this state, and especially in these states that are affected by this project, and say, no, in fact, we need to reject this 45Q tax credit grift.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting, I just want to mention before I get to your next question, Karla, is these conversations we had on the Senate and the House really evolved to other issues. For me, this pipeline project really, and I know Karla agrees too, it comes down to the Constitution and your private property rights. And we see a theme, and you guys see a theme on this show over and over again, that we talk about private property rights. But that led us into conversations about mandatory EID in cattle. We talked about the focus on how cow farts are destroying the planet, and how right now we're seeing the Angus Association get a $4.53 million grant from Jeff Bezos to study emissions in cattle. And while that's a private enterprise, it can also lead to the perpetuation of the AOC's Green New Deal, and we got to get rid of the cow farts. We see in Ireland with measuring the emissions of cattle, and of course they have that mandatory ID. So we talked about that. We talked about packer monopolies and the different challenges facing the beef industry. We also talked about wind and solar. And I guess briefly, Karla, can you talk a little bit about what Representative Harriet Hageman said on the whole wind, solar, Green New Deal boondoggle?
Well, we know that wind and solar has really been scaled back, even defunded, with some of what we're looking at in this bill. She said that the long-term prospects for wind and solar, the investment is just not there because of the uncertainty of the way forward. And of course, we know that this is not the best use of our tax dollars, because we have much more reliable sources of energy than wind and solar. In fact, coal is so much more reliable and cheaper, a cheaper form of energy for our United States of America. And we need to get back to what makes sense, what makes common sense. And that is why, Speaker John Hanson was on this trip with us. He had to go back yesterday, but we were able to make this trip to make sure that our voices were heard on this level in our nation's capital in Washington, because we thought that, again, some of these fights maybe were about ending for South Dakota, but obviously they were not. And so we need to make sure that the people continue to be heard on this issue, and the issues like wind and solar and the EID tags, they are coming for you and for me. And if our states do not speak up against this and have our voices be heard in Washington, this might just all be rammed down our throat from the federal level.
Absolutely. I know we've had this talk many times, Karla. Washington, D.C. is corrupt. It's a dark place. There's light here too, but you and John were willing to enter the belly of the beast to tell the story of the South Dakota people who have fought so hard to secure their private property rights. You're in the middle of a campaign running for governor and lieutenant governor, but you mentioned states' rights. And what does that mean to you? And if you and John secure this position, how would your focus be towards, sizing down government and really focusing on bolstering the states' rights of South Dakota against the heavy hand of the federal government?
Yeah. Well, the more money that you take from any institution, including the government, the more there's going to be strings attached. And so I would like to see, along with Speaker Hanson, that we get less dependent on the federal government. But as long as all of these incentives are out there, it's very difficult to have the free market operating in such a way that it's going to let individuals in our states really go forth and do the things that they need to do. If there's not a level playing field, though, that just doesn't work.
Right.
And so we want to see states' rights protected, and we certainly would be an advocate for that.
The quiet part out loud is, quite frankly, the free market. Free market capitalism, like good businesses thrive, quit propping up certain industries, and let the taxpayers keep their money.
Absolutely.
Well, Karla, any parting words before we wrap up this segment?
Well, I would just encourage all of you again, if you could raise your voice on behalf of the people of not only South Dakota, but across this nation, and especially you that are affected by the 45Q tax credit. This is one final chance to try to get this out of this Senate bill, the big, beautiful bill. Again, many other good things in this bill, but that is going to continue to push projects like that that really should exist outside of a tax credit. If they want to do their business, go ahead and do the business. Let people say yes or no, thank you, and get involved in the free market. But in order for people to incentivize, or with the 45Q tax credit, it's not a level playing field, and they shouldn't be using our taxpayers to do that. So call your senators and encourage them to claw back this 45Q tax credit out of the big, beautiful bill.
Absolutely. One last question. Back to the campaign trail tomorrow. What do you have planned for the upcoming week?
Well, we've got a lot of things planned, and especially even in the long term, we've got many parades coming up. We're going to be at the Stock Growers at the RCAF convention out west. And so we're really excited about what's in store. And if you would like us to come to your town or your neighborhood, or if you have a special event, please reach out to our legislative emails, and we certainly will get back to you, or go to our campaign page.
Absolutely. And Karla will be a featured speaker on June 13th in Aberdeen, South Dakota at our landowner victory party, because although the fight continues, we have stacked up many, many wins in this grassroots movement. It's worth pausing to celebrate. So it's open to all, prime rib, all the fixings, even be a DJ, and Karla will be speaking.
Hope to see you there June 13th in Aberdeen.
Absolutely. Thank you, Karla.